Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's DMG, and welcome back to Blitz. And today we are going to see Honor Among in the FV215B 183 drop the hammer on the red team. This tank is the British Tier 10 tank destroyer that doesn't really fit in with the rest of the line. You have tanks like the AT-7 and the AT-8 and then the AT-15. And then you get the Tortoise, which are all these slow-moving high DPM, somewhat respectable alpha, and I would say, noob armor profile, as in, it's really good unless you know where to shoot right. But then you get this at tier 10. And this tank has been redefining or not redefining, but has redefined and then consistently defined the tier 10 meta for the longest time, ever since mediums were nerfed in the IS-7 uh, was was getting a counter developed to it. Now I say that because IS-7 was super strong after 140s were nerfed. And how do people counter heavy armor? Well, they play high penetration, high alpha destroyers. This, the highest alpha, the highest standard ammunition penetration. Without calibrated, you're looking at 310 millimeters of AP penetration, and of course that AP a little bit better than APCR in terms of the normalization. So you're going to be going through more consistently. And there's not a lot of tanks that can have armor that can contest 310 millimeters of penetration even from the front. However, there's a lot of problems with this tank. And I'm glad Wargaming has decided to nerf it. If you haven't heard about that, please check out blitzhanger.com. It will discuss all of the nerfs that are coming to this tank finally after 2 years. Now, I understand this isn't the most winning tank, but this is the highest damage dealing tank. And there are lots of people out there, or theorists, that say dealing more damage equals more wins. And I agree to a point. But the fact is, noobs drive this tank and end up having an impact on the battle more than they should. Not to say that Honor Among is a noob by any means. He is a very respectable player. But the fact is, people who aren't very good are being able to fire 2 shots off and deal 2,600 damage with 2 Hesh rounds, or fire 3 shots off and deal 3,300 damage, or 3,300 plus, or 3,300 if you low roll all your shots, right? And it's allowing people who shouldn't have an impact on the game to have an impact on the game, to influence the game. And that's not really something you want to have. You want the game to be skill-based, to be able to continuously exploit your opponent. It really is a true testament of skill rather than sitting in a bush with camo net on and then nuking someone for 1300 alpha or 930 alpha. It truly is ridiculous. Now, why is this tank? What about this tank makes this so ridiculous? Well, in the previous meta, there was the binoculars camo net combo, which allows you to spot and stay unspotted and fire in the FV215B 183. However, now, because of the way gold rounds have been nerfed and all that, this tank's premium was not nerfed because it's Hesh, so it just deals more damage, and it still has respectable penetration. Running calibrated shells, you're pumping 320 something on your standard rounds, and you're pumping 240 something on your Hesh rounds, on your premium Hesh rounds. And you can still take a few of like the cheap Hesh rounds just if you want to splash frontally on the tank and deal 500 damage. Or more, depending on how armored it is, right? And that's the thing with this tank. You don't really need to penetrate. You can just, as long as you hit the target, you're going to hurt it bad. It's almost like the KV2 in that regard. And tier 10 needs to be a tier where it's not just about, where HE splashing should be a tactical means of destroying a target, not this almost artillery-like battery where you will simply splash your target with one shell and take away a quarter of his HP. That's not very healthy for the game. Now, one of the most broken things about this vehicle is the camouflage. It has better camouflage than a grill and some of the other tier 10 TDs. Now I know the grill isn't necessarily known for its camo, but consider that the grill is a little smaller than the 215B. The 215B is kind of, or the 215B 183, I should say, is kind of sizable to the mouse or the E100, really. And the fact that it has better camo and you can sit there and just lob 1300 alpha shells while unspotted truly is disgusting. Another thing that's kind of broken on it is that it has a turret, so you don't have to break camo while you're doing this. You also have the highest traverse in the game, something which I'm going to get back to in the next replay. But uh, it this super high traverse for this tank destroyer plus a turret means that a gun with 1300 alpha can turn to face you so quickly. Now consider the Jagdpanzer, where you really have to work for your money, angle, fire for 800, which is technically less. And think of the 183, its gun handling isn't all that atrocious for the amount of alpha that it packs. You're going to see in this replay just how dangerous this tank can be. And on the last replay, you saw 6,722 damage. Absolutely ridiculous for just being able to fire 4 or 5 shots. I'm fine with it having high alpha and high penetration on test rounds the way it has now, but the fact that it has such good gun handling for a 183mm weapon and such good camouflage for it being as large as a mouse truly is ridiculous. I don't think that this tank should exist in the state that it should, while tanks like the Jagdpanzer exist in the state that they are right now, or the Grill. So I'm glad that it's receiving a camo nerf and a mobility nerf and a gun handling nerf. So this does not change the key concept of the tank of where you're dealing massive amounts of alpha, but it makes that alpha a little harder to use. Now look at this. There is no reason this bush should cover this whole tank. This tank is tall and should be spotted. You can definitely see the top of the tank over the bush, but yet a grill would be spotted, and that tank isn't, and that Leopard PTA is now on half his hit points within the first minute of a game on 1 exposure. You can kind of see how broken this tank is for good players who really know how to make, I guess, quotation marks, tactical trades, right? And simply deal these massive butt tons of alpha. 1300 with penetration that's higher than your standard tier 10 mediums truly is ridiculous. Look at this E50M, look at this traverse. He thinks he has the best of them. He really doesn't. A turret and that level of traverse creates a lot of problems for the enemies or just simply other tanks at this tier. It's quite unfair when you think about it, and it is a broken mechanic that needs to be readjusted. However, let's not say that this is quite the broken tank, as Honor Among is doing a great job driving it, and when you put broken tank with broken player, you get super OP, right? So this tank, I would say, regardless of who's playing it, actually, now that I think about it, it's better if it is nerfed a little, because people who shouldn't have an impact on the game have a much higher chance of having an impact. You can deal 900 damage by planting your thumbs firmly up your ass in the spawn. And those players should normally be doing 300 to 0, right, by firing 1 shot in their medium tank. But when you see a really good player, you can make these tactical trades like this. And you can almost roleplay a heavy tank. This tank actually received an armor nerf way back. And it was actually more armored than it is now. So you could really side scrape in this thing and be a super dangerous threat. Granted, that is no longer the case, but still, as long as you deal 930 or 1300 and they deal 300, you're coming out better for it. Now take a look at this. This is going to go 1300 for nothing here, or 930 for nothing. Do you think that a 140 could do that? No, the 140 has to sit out in front of a tank for at least 10 seconds, or 12 seconds, 10 seconds, excuse me, 9 or 10 seconds to deal that damage. Whereas the 183, it's a blink of an eye, 930 damage. Now consider the 140, 310 alpha. 183, 930 alpha. 1 exposure for 3 times the amount of damage the 140 would make with 3 exposures, which means you are most likely taking less damage in the 183 than you are dishing out. And that is what is so scary about this tank and why it should be nerfed. I really think it will free up the competitive meta for other tank destroyers as well. Tanks like the E4 and Grill need love. You know, it's just not a very good position for them right now in the game because this tank simply exists. Um, I feel like light tank play may increase now because you don't expect 183 sitting everywhere with such accurate weaponry to be able to hit you. But anyways, 7,000 plus damage is an absolutely fantastic result for Honor Among shotgunning the 183 on Canyon. Arguably, that probably shouldn't happen, but regardless, very, very good. If you liked this content, or I guess this rant, please give it a like, and I hope to see you next time.